again, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is Todd Sylvester with the Todd Sylvester Inspires Belief Cast. I want to thank all of you for, again, all your support and joining in on these amazing belief casts that we've had. And thankfully, it's not because of me. It's because of the amazing people that we have on. And today's no different. I have a really good friend and a co-worker with me today, Corey Markisich. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, no problem. I'm happy to be here.
So good to have you. Corey is the executive director at Wasatch Recovery. And not only does he do a phenomenal job there in that position, but he's got an incredible story. He lives a great life, and I've always looked up to you, Corey.
Thanks.
And so thanks for joining us and being willing to come share your story with us.
So excited to.
Yeah. I want to give a little shout out, though, to our sponsor, Veracity Networks. Thank you for believing in me as well. Because of this sponsorship, it allows, it's opened up a lot of avenues to get this belief cast into many more downloads out there and many more avenues. So thank you for all of that. And then again, for you listeners, for being willing to listen to me and to these amazing guests and sharing that. It's been fantastic. And today's going to be no different. So anyway, Corey, thanks for being here.
Yeah. Happy to be here.
Yeah. So, obviously you're our executive director here at Wasatch Recovery. We're live here right now. How long have you been in that position?
So I've been here, gosh, I got to count now. I've been here about 5 or 6 years now.
Yeah.
Let's go back and count.
Yeah, because I think I've been here 7. I mean, I took a little sabbatical, but about 7 years. And I was here just right before you got here. So, yeah, it's probably about right.
Yeah, because I had come back. I met Mark and Jeff years ago, actually right when they started this project. But I was in Florida before I came here. And so I was actually just looking at pictures of Florida. So I think it was about 6.5 years or so ago.
Oh, okay.
So.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, it doesn't seem like that.
It doesn't.
This office actually was when I first came here. This was my office.
That's right.
So yeah,
it's funny because I had a bigger office when I was first here, and I remember they were saying, "Hey, we got this new guy coming in. His name's Corey, and can we move you?" I'm like, "I don't want to move."
Well, and you didn't know me at the time, but I'm the last person that wants a big office and everything.
Yeah.
That's just not me.
No,
but,
I know. Well, I'm excited for people to hear your story because you're in recovery. You've been doing really well there. You're a great example to many people, and but I want people to get to know you a little bit more about what it was like for you growing up, and so tell us a little bit about that.
So I'm from Utah. I'm from Davis County, Utah, which is about 15 minutes or so north of Salt Lake. I grew up in a very, very good neighborhood. I mean, everything was pretty good.
Yeah.
At the time, it was where we lived when we moved there when I was about 8 or so.
Uh-huh.
And my parents built a new home, and it was kind of this up-and-coming place in Davis County. And it was awesome. I mean, it was just like what you see on TV, like Leave It to Beaver neighborhood. Everyone knows each other.
Yeah.
There's actually just a couple weeks ago, my daughter said, "Where did you grow up, Dad?" And so I drove down there and showed her the neighborhood, and it was funny because I've been there in years. I'm like, this is where so and so lived, and this is where so and so lived. You just knew everybody.
Right.
We knew everybody, and it was a perfect kind of big square, and so we kind of just ran loose there. I mean, the summers, you never had parents around, sleeping on everyone's trampolines. Just, it was good. It was a good place to grow up. I played, Little League baseball, played football. I had a pretty good childhood.
Yeah.
When so I'm the oldest of 4 kids in my family. I have, a younger brother, then a younger sister, and then my youngest brother. And when I was about 12, 13 years old, 7th grade, my parents came to us and said, "Hey, we're going to move." And it kind of rattled me.
Yeah, sure.
Because
you're comfortable where you're at.
Yeah, and it was like my kingdom. I mean, just riding bikes, it's just how it was. And also, once they said where we're moving, they said, "We're going to move up over here," which was on the hill,
Yeah.
And to me at the time, that was like the enemy. you
right.
know, because we were down here and they were up there. It was this stupid thing that we made up in our minds.
Right.
You know?
Sure. Yeah.
But I did not want to do it. I was, you know, and it honestly, it wasn't far. I mean, it's probably 5-6 miles in reality, but it was different, you know?
Right.
And also I was 13, you know, I was kind of at that age where all your friends and everything, you're kind of learning who you want to be.
Yeah.
And so we moved and it was okay. We had, you know, it was a great home. My parents built this great house and,
Yeah, sure.
but I had started 7th grade and the funny thing is I went to the same school I was going to go to anyway. So it wasn't
right.
like,
It wasn't like, yeah.
you know,
Well, like you said, is you made it up in your head, like, oh, they're the enemy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just didn't want to do it. And I kind of dug my heels in, but of course you got to do what you got to do.
Right.
So I did it and we moved and it was good. You know, it was fine. But I started 7th grade and had a whole new group of friends that I met and it was good. You know,
Yeah.
I, again, was playing baseball. I was always fairly decent at sports, never the best, but
Right.
you know, I was always could excel in certain things and it was fun, you know, but 7th grade is kind of when I started kind of finding who I wanted to be. And I started kind of being a little brat, you know,
Sure.
just talking back, never getting in like crazy trouble, but looking back,
Yeah.
that's kind of where I could
Kind of where
tell,
it started a little bit. Yeah.
you know, and it was cool because I was in 7th grade and at my school at the time, it was like 7th, 8th, and 9th grade.
Oh,
So
yeah.
it was just, you know, 3 grades. Coming in as a 7th grader, you're brand new, you know, you're kind of
Right.
this little kid and going through puberty and all these weird time of life. Well, I had some people in my neighborhood that were in 9th grade that kind of took me under their wing and became pretty good friends. And it was cool because I got to hang out with the cool kids at the school and it was just a good time, you know.
Yeah.
And it was fun, you know, and I always did okay in school. In elementary school, I never really remember struggling with
Right.
grades and things. 7th grade, same thing. But about 8th and 9th grade, I didn't do bad. I just got lazy.
Right.
Like, it became too easy for me. Like, I figured out I don't need to study. I can just
Right.
do this
I'll just
or do
wing
that.
it. Yeah.
And I got fine grades, but I didn't try hard.
Yeah.
I was always kind of cutting corners and
Yeah.
it was always just, how can I have more fun, you know?
Right.
Skateboarding and snowboarding, and everything was just fun, you know?
Yeah,
My whole
yeah.
life was really fun.
Sure. Yeah.
And again, even in my home life, my parents, I mean, they made it fun. We were going on vacations.
Well, it's fun. It's interesting you say that because knowing you now, I mean, you do some really fun things. Like, I mean, just the other day you rented all this, you know, blow up stuff for your kids and you surprised them. I mean, you do a parade in your neighborhood.
Yeah,
I mean, like
stuff.
a serious parade. And I just point that out, that, I mean, that's kind of how I see you, is you just love having fun.
Yeah, no, it's fun.
Yeah.
And I believe, and it's part of kind of who I've become too, is I need to have fun things, like, you know, and it's especially we get kind of drawn down in all these things in our life.
Yeah.
And it's fun, you know, like doing like, so my kids, you know, they kind of got, you know, kind of screwed out of their last day of school because of everything that's going on. And so, yeah, we threw them, I did their own field day, rented some blow up things and did
That's
a
so
dunk
cool.
tank, and it's fun. But
That's
yeah,
awesome.
we're always kind of doing wild things. And some of that, I will say, comes from my upbringing. You know, my
Right.
parents were always doing pretty fun
Just
stuff.
doing fun
with us.
stuff,
And
yeah.
my dad would always, hey, let's go do this or let's do that. And I've always thought that's cool, you know? I mean, how cool is it to have a bounce house in your front yard?
Dude, totally. Yeah, that's amazing.
So, yeah, so I, you know, same thing. I mean, went through 8th and 9th grade. Things were good. Got good grades, you know, things just, and that was kind of like right when skateboarding and snowboarding, you know, was kind of like a cool thing.
Out,
And I started kind of forming that. That was my identity. I loved it. You know, I absolutely loved snowboarding and I wanted to be a professional snowboarder.
Really?
Like that was going to be my thing, you know?
Yeah.
And at the time, no one knew what that meant.
Right.
It was just like, that'd be a cool job, you know, to
For
snowboard.
sure. Yeah.
So high school came and same thing, you know, things were pretty good. A whole new slew of new friends now.
Yeah.
And, I just kind of did my thing. And that's when, in ninth grade, in seventh grade, when I started hanging out with some of the ninth graders,
right.
I was starting to get exposed to, different things. Like, people had tried marijuana and people had drank and smoked cigarettes. But it never was, in junior high, it never was like a thing. Like, it was just like, you knew of some people
heard
that
about
had tried it.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. And really where I lived, it just wasn't that big of a deal, at least in my circles.
Yeah.
High school changed a little bit. It was, there was parties, and it seems to be as high school kind of progressed, there was more parties, and, we would end up hanging out with more people, and definitely tried, tried smoking pot and drinking, but it never, for me, was never something that I just absolutely loved. It was fun.
Right.
Honestly, I'll admit at the time it was something that felt fun to me. I always loved adventures.
Right.
And so it seemed like doing something wrong, but, and we seemed, we all thought we were good kids, so nothing's going to happen. And we did, where I lived, we kind of lived in a bubble.
Sure.
And we were pretty protected.
Right.
From what we thought.
Yeah, right.
And when I always forget, it's like I think it was my junior year, I tried a painkiller, and I actually didn't need it at the time. It wasn't like I got hurt or anything, but someone had got hurt, and I still remember it was like, hey, my brother said that these are cool. We should try these, and he had got it for an injury. He actually had.
Oh, okay.
But he was like, hey, let's give this a shot. Did it, and nothing really happened. Like, it was like, oh, that was stupid.
You're like, whoop-de-doo, yeah.
That was cool. But of course, at the time, you pretend it's really cool, you know, like that was.
Yeah.
But
I took a painkiller.
Yeah, like that made me cool.
Yeah.
But the weird thing is that it kind of kept finding me. Like, other people would have it, and then I got my wisdom teeth out, and I was getting exposed to that.
Yeah.
And again, I never fell in love with smoking pot or anything else, but there was something about kind of that piece that I was like, it just felt different.
Yeah. And
it wasn't like I was, we hear stories all the time at work where it's changed my life and this and that.
Yeah.
I just felt a little bit different. And I kind of liked what it felt like.
Yeah.
But at the time, it wasn't like you just, go to some guy in an apartment and buy a painkiller.
Right.
Like, to me, I just thought it was something you got when you go to the hospital.
Yeah.
And I grew up in a family that didn't go to the doctor much unless you, like, broke your arm,
Yeah, unless something was broken, you're going. Other than that, you're not.
Yeah, and so it wasn't, I wasn't exposed to a lot of meds, it just wasn't really in my circles. But my senior year, they seemed to be coming out more.
Mm-hmm.
And that was like 90, 96, 97.
Yeah.
Right when, now that we know when the whole opiate thing kind of blew up. And
it started to blow up, yeah.
But again, no one was buying them, and I had friends at my senior year, we started kind of just like you do. Some people kind of migrate one way, and we were all a big group of friends and we all had fun, but we all started kind of fracturing.
Yeah.
Doing our own thing. And I was kind of like, never even thought past high school.
Right.
It was the funnest time of my life, living every day.
Absolutely.
Snowboarding, just doing your thing. But I never thought, obviously you think past, but I wasn't like, I didn't have plans. Like, maybe I'll go to college, or maybe I'll do this. Or I remember one time I walked in on my parents talking about what I was going to do. This was my senior year, and I heard them, and they're like, gosh, I wish you would, go to school, or I wish you would think of doing something. And I remember thinking, why? Who cares? I'll figure it out.
I don't need to worry about that now. That's later. Yeah.
Well, now, I think back, and they were probably freaking out because I had no plans. I was just like living it up, and it was awesome. And it was a very fun time. I had good friends and life was good.
Yeah.
So everything was cool. I still was experimenting here and there.
Yeah.
Things I never really got.
Was this on your own, or were you doing it with a group of friends?
With friends.
With the friends?
Yeah, with friends. Again, I'd go to parties, and there was always the people smoking pot or the people that would drink.
Right.
And that's really where it ended with us. There wasn't I mean, now it's crazy how we hear people that junior high, they were exposed to heroin and different things. Like, that just wasn't around when I was a kid. And I mean, the worst we'd know is someone that would get really drunk and pass out, you know. I mean, that was, and we always heard of someone that did harder things, but it was like a myth. Like, oh my gosh, did you hear about that one guy?
Yeah,
you know?
right.
So after that happened, you know, I got to my senior year, and this time of the year, this is kind of when everything kind of changed. It was the last week of high school, and again, you know, living life, things are awesome, and we had this big, huge kind of celebration party that was planned for the end of the year, and my friends that were in 9th grade that I was telling you about when I was in 7th, they had all graduated high school, and they were up in college in different places, you know, and so we thought we were really cool. We hung out with older people, and we had it all made, right?
Right.
Well, on Memorial Day, my family always goes out and sees graves and does all the thing, and then we usually go to a movie.
Yeah.
We're backing out of my driveway to go to a movie, and this ambulance just goes ripping up the street. And of course, it's like, cool, let's go chase
what's
the
going on?
ambulance,
Yeah.
you know? That's cool. So we back out, and we're like going to, I still remember we were going to the Star Wars movie, the new one that had just come out, since all the ones in the 80s. They had just made episode 1 or whatever it was called. And I remember we were going to be late, and we're like, no, let's go chase this. It's going to be cool, you know? So we go up there, and it doesn't even get past a quarter mile past my house, and we're pulling out, and we see it slow down. And I had a really good friend that lived there. He was one of the older kids, but he'd been at college and everything. Yeah. But we still hung out, and I knew he was home for the weekend.
Yeah.
And the weirdest thing happened that I thought, oh no, something's happening, you know, like with him.
Right.
Had no reason to think what, because I didn't know, you know.
Yeah.
Could have been anything.
Could be anything, right?
But I just had that weird feeling in my pit of my stomach, you know. And I remember my dad pulled over, and then right then, I mean, you know, the family was coming out, and what had happened is he had taken his life just then.
Oh,
He had just done it. And instantly, I remember thinking, like, my dad just kind of, let's go, you know, like he dropped the family off and we went for a drive. And I remember sitting there talking to my dad, and I mean, looking back now, I'm a dad, and he was probably like, oh my gosh.
Freaking out. Yeah.
What am I tell my
What
kid?
do I say?
Yeah, because we were just driving around. He was distracting me.
Yeah.
Eventually, we had to come back, right?
Yeah.
So we come back down the hill, and by then, everyone was there, friends and everybody. This is before cell phones.
Right.
You know, and so this traveled so quick. I mean, everyone's sitting on the lawn, all of our friends. I mean, it was, I still don't know how everyone found out so fast. But it was a rough time, you know? I mean, it was one of those, I had never had anyone pass away yet in my family.
Yeah.
So this was my first experience with someone dying.
Someone dying,
you know? And it was pretty tragic. And again, it was kind of the same story. The funny guy, you know, no one knew anything he was struggling with, and but he was struggling with some things, and we didn't know until it was too late, you know. So I went to a funeral in the morning and a high school graduation in the afternoon, all on the same day. That was kind of the end of the school year, and of course that puts a damper on life, you know, like, what are we gonna do now? We can't go to this party, and it's not gonna be fun. And so it threw me for a loop. I mean, I kind of think back, was it really as bad as it was? But it was to me.
Yeah, sure.
And I handled it fairly well, you know. I mean, it was okay, and we got through it. Some of our other friends didn't, but it was that kind of moment of, now what?
Yeah.
And it was a little rough, but you know, I mean, I had the summer, and I was working, and again, I was trying to figure out, what are you going to do with your life, you know? And I kind of just straightened everything up, you know, just kind of focused, and and again, I look, you know, think, should I have done this or should I have done that? What worked out.
Yeah.
You know, and it was a sad situation, but it was my kind of first experience with, you know, this is life, you know. I don't live in a bubble.
Yeah. Yeah. It's one of those shocking moments. I remember when I was in high school, hearing of wasn't really friends with him, but hearing someone in your grade who had committed suicide. And it was just that feeling of, whoa. I mean, just, you don't even know how to explain it.
Yeah.
Because you've heard about those, maybe
Right.
in the past or something like that. But when you actually know someone close to you doing that, it's a whole new feeling.
And
about it.
It was at a time, now we're at a different time where we talk about it, and it's something that, it's I'm not saying that it's like easier, because it's never an easy situation.
Right.
But at that time it was still kind of behind closed doors,
Yeah.
And now
people didn't talk about it.
Yeah. And now, thankfully we're able to talk about things and get things out there and do some good stuff with it. But then it wasn't,
Right.
There was and what's really weird at the time, there was, I think, 2 or 3 other people, I didn't know them, but in that area that had also taken their lives in that year. And yeah, so it was weird. It was just a weird time, But what happened is I right before school ended, I was seeming to find a lot of pills, they just kind of were there. But when this happened, I just thought everything was just, I'm done, and it wasn't like it was a conscious decision of I'm quitting. It just kind of grew out of it.
You just
yeah.
Started,
I got into school, I got working, and it just wasn't my thing, It wasn't at the time. Now knowing how addiction and things work, I just wasn't. It was more of an opportunity type thing, what I was doing.
Yeah.
Obviously, I was wiring my brain for future stuff, but at the time it wasn't like a huge issue. So I went to school, just kind of working, I kind of just started kind of living a different life. I, had met my wife, actually, that I'm married to now, and we started dating. And
shout out to Bree.
Yeah,
Thanks.
she's
awesome. Yeah, she really is.
She's more than awesome. I mean, if she wasn't here, I wouldn't be sitting here talking to you.
And I believe that.
she is.
Yeah.
She's the one that keeps me straight and kind of bumps me back into line every once in a while. And actually, even the story, same thing. I mean, if it wasn't for her at the time, I mean, I don't know what I would have done. She kind of became my focus and my rock,
Yeah.
I mean, it was like, I've got this pretty cool girl, and she was working, and she was super smart, and I saw how my friends were kind of going a different way, and I didn't want that,
Sure.
I knew that I didn't have plans in my life, but I also knew that I wanted to do something with my life.
Yeah.
And I helped focus it. Yeah,
that's good.
I actually remember, 'cause before her, it was just, party. And I remember she was working, and I brought her a drink, and I sat out in the parking lot, and I remember thinking, do you want to do this? Like, this is weird. You don't do this.
Right,
like, you're bringing her a drink while she's at work. Like, this isn't you. This could really change who you are.
Exactly. Yeah.
and it did. But it was good. I don't regret any of it.
That's good. Well, this could backfire her, you never know.
Well, and I remember sitting there thinking, what the heck are you doing, weirdo? Like, this isn't you.
That's awesome.
But I did it.
Yeah.
It worked out.
So before you met her, though, were things starting now? Were you starting getting back into, with the pills and things like that? And
it was, to be honest, it was always there. Like it slowed down.
But it was still there from time to time.
Yeah. Like I'd find it, or I'd, be working with someone, and they'd have shoulder surgery, and hey, can I have some of these? And so that's really how it was. But I honestly never knew you could buy them. Like, in my head, and it's because I was never exposed to it.
Yeah.
I didn't know that you could just call a guy up and be like, hey,
and
give me a couple pills.
Yeah.
I knew you could do that for pot.
Right.
But not pills.
Yeah.
And it was different times. You really could just find it in any medicine cabinet. And that's what happened. I started finding myself finding them more often.
Yeah.
And almost seeking them out.
Yeah. Sure.
You would, see, hey, you got your knee surgery? Do
you have any of
those
these?
Esther? Do you like those? And I justified in my head, I'm not smoking cigarettes. I'm not drinking alcohol. I'm just taking these,
Yeah.
It was the dumbest thing ever, but I made it right.
Yeah. Well, I think a lot of people who get caught up in the opiates is because of that reason. Is like, hey, it's prescribed. It's,
It's a pill. It's clean.
It's a pill. It's clean. No one knows about it. I don't smell. I don't.
Yep.
Yeah, I think that is one of the reasons why it's at times so bad for people.
Well, it got to a point that I would even like give some of my friends hard times. Like, dude, you smoke pot? You're an idiot. Like,
right.
You're such an idiot. When I'm like taking pills, you know,
Yeah.
like right before I told them that.
Yeah.
Which is the dumbest thing ever.
The hierarchy of drug use, right?
I was cooler.
I'm cooler. I'm up here. I'm a you know, I'm a classy drug addict.
So stupid. So stupid.
Yeah, it's funny how we do that.
But yeah, so things kind of just, I mean, and it progressed, and then what happened, it was about a year, maybe 2 years after that, I was with a friend, and he was like, hey, you know, I know you like to take pain meds. You ever try this? And I'm like, what is it? And it was Oxycontin. And I'm like, no. And I had heard of Oxycontin, you know. We actually had a couple of the friends that went kind of haywire that went to rehab for Oxycontin, you know. And so I was like, no way. Like, that's no good. You know, like, don't do that.
I'm not going to do that.
And I still don't know why, but for whatever reason, I just said, yeah, I'll try it. Let me try it. And I liked it. I mean, I liked that it wasn't a lot. Like, I didn't have to take 2 or 3 of them. I only had to take a little bit.
Yeah.
It worked better. And it, like, I honestly, at that time, that's the time where I knew, wow, I really like this. And I remember thinking, this is good. I like this. I could do this forever.
Yeah.
And the next day, I said, hey, where'd you get that? And he said, oh, this, you know, so-and-so gave it to me, whatever. But then I started the way I am. I wanted to be like, well, I don't want him to know that I'm going to do this.
Yeah.
So I kind of went on my own search.
Oh, okay.
And that's when I got exposed to where you can buy it.
Where you can get it.
And you can get it. And all of a sudden, it was a whole new world of, you can get it whenever you want.
Wow.
And at that time, it was wherever you want.
Right.
I mean, it was scarily just too available.
Right.
Which made it worse. And it progressed fast. You know, I mean, I started taking them, and then you'd find out so-and-so that could get them, and this and that. I didn't want all these people to know that I was taking these pills. So I had like these 3 different little groups of people, and they didn't want anyone to know.
Yeah.
The ironic thing is I was in school and almost done with college at the time.
Really? Okay.
I was up at the U, and I was studying finance. And
does anyone know you're doing this at this point? Do your parents know that you're struggling with this, or
no?
Okay.
No. Well, they knew something was off because I was,
but they didn't know what
different.
it was.
Yeah. And then I had obviously some of those groups of friends, and some of my closest friends, we were doing it, but no one knew the extent, because even the people I was with didn't know that I was doing it with these guys.
Okay.
So, I mean, I was doing it a lot more than everyone else knew.
Right.
And so no one really knew how bad it was.
Okay.
And I didn't either. Like, I didn't either. And this went on for about a year, until all of a sudden I'm like, you know what? This is weird. Like, what am I doing? You know, I had just got a job at, you know, a firm doing stocks and bonds.
Mm-hmm.
And they said, you know, you have X amount of months where you need to be able to pass the Series 7 and the 6 and all these licensing to do this.
Yeah.
And I remember thinking, I'm doing these pills every day. Like, what? I'm an idiot. Like, I have an opportunity to do something. So I stopped, just said, I'm done. And I buckled down. I studied every single day, you know, and I ended up passing those tests. And I did it all summer. I passed the test, became a licensed broker. Everything was cool. And right as it was done, I'm like, well, I did that. Let's go back to this now, you know. And so I started back up. And it progressed pretty fast again.
Yeah, sure.
And again, I wasn't drinking alcohol. I wasn't smoking, and I wasn't hanging out at parties. I was just kind of doing this. I justified it in my head. It was making me a better person. I was happier.
Right.
I was more outgoing. It was all the crap you tell yourself.
Sure.
Just
Yeah.
BS, you know. and so I ended up, you know, I was one of the people I was getting it from. Well, not one, but a group of the people I was getting it from were getting it from all these different channels, and one of the channels was they were actually getting it from a physician that was part of it. I mean, he was knowingly prescribing people medication because it was like a cash thing, and I mean, it was just this big bullcrap thing. And when it all came down, it was a lot of people. I'm talking, 200 plus people were involved with this thing. And when it all came down, of course, I was involved, and so they came knocking at my door and, took me away. And I was married at the time. We had just got married, and no one really knew, and I'd always weaseled my way out of every problem I could figure out.
Yeah.
This one I couldn't. And deep down inside, I didn't want to. I wanted it. I needed something to change,
Needed something to kind of wake you up.
I had, at the time, I had told my parents, I had told my wife. People knew at the time that I was struggling with this because I recognized I had a problem. I didn't know what that meant at the time, but I had tried to go see a counselor. I had gone to a doctor. I had done all these things, but at the time, treatment wasn't really out there like it is now.
Yeah.
It wasn't.
It's not on every street corner back then. Like
it wasn't what it was. But when I got in trouble, all of a sudden it was like, okay, this is really serious, and it shook my world.
Right.
And it just, everything changed, I never went back to where I was, our apartment we were with. My wife was like, nope, like this isn't gonna work. Like, you've had all these chances and you blew it. And she held a good boundary. And again, it saved my life because otherwise I could have slipped back in and just revolved the door. And, it was a dark time. Life got pretty crappy and I didn't know what to do,
Right.
And this is kind of when everything kind of shifts. Is my mom comes to me. This was about 3 or 4 days after all this had happened. I got told not to come home. I had, got arrested. I didn't know what arrested meant. I'm like, what do I do now? And the cops are like, well, you're going to have to go and you're going to make a phone call. And they're like telling me all these things. They like write a thing on my hand. Like, they were pretty cool. Like, I think they recognized that. They knew. Yeah. Yeah. And I remember just thinking, oh my gosh, this is madness, Yeah. So I woke up. My parents were out of town. They had come back. I woke up and my mom's like has this newspaper. Like back in the days of newspapers. Yeah. I still tease my mom because she still gets the newspaper to this day. It's like, you have the internet. Like, what are you doing? I know. But she has the newspaper and she has this thing circled and it's a meeting, like a meeting time. Sure. And I'm like, the heck's this? She's like, you're going to this tonight. And I'm like, what is it? She's like, you're going to this. So she leaves and I look at it and it says LDS something meeting or something, It was the last thing I needed at the time. I did not need a religion telling me. I already felt crappy about myself. I was so ashamed. I was this big, super small. I just felt like I was the worthless person. Right. Yeah. And I was like, to me at the time I was, man, I had lied. I had been arrested. Right. I had, I just felt like pure crap. The low of lows. Yeah, the low of lows. Yeah. And I thought to myself, church, really? Like, and I grew up very religious and it was an important thing to me. But at the time, it just was in a dark place. That's not what I wanted, So I go to this meeting. And I walk in. It's at a church. I walk in the door and there's a sign and it says the meeting this way. And I walk in and I just walk in the door. There's one guy sitting there and no empty chairs, all empty chairs, but one guy, which is like the instructor guy. And he's like in a suit. And you. And me. And I'm like, I turn and just, I'm out. You're like, I am not staying. No, wasn't a chance. I'm like, nope. And he goes, hey. And I said, sorry, I'm in the wrong spot, wrong room. And he's like, no, you're not. He knew. Yeah. And he grabs me, he drives me back in, and he said, so what's up? Yeah. And I was actually thinking, I'm going to bolt. I'll just be back there. My mom picks me up. It was bad. But he proceeds to tell me his story. he had a pretty rough story.
Yeah.
I mean, it was pretty bad. And he had told me, he was actually in prison. And while he was in prison, some people came to him and shared him. I mean, it was missionaries for the LDS church is what it was. And how it changed his life and how he had been forgiven and all these different things. He found religion, right?
Yeah.
And I remember sitting there thinking, what a jerk am I judged this guy because he was in a suit. And this guy is way worse than I ever thought that I would,
Right, yeah.
And he was a really cool guy,
yeah.
And it was the first time I was exposed to kind of like a treatment type world, like counseling type stuff. I'm like, hey, this guy's all right, like it was cool. And I started going to that meeting it was on a Sunday night.
Right.
I went to that same meeting for almost like 2 years straight.
Serious?
Yeah.
I never knew that part.
Every Sunday night.
Wow.
Man.
That's cool.
It was cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. It became kind of like and it was no questions asked. It's on Sunday night. That's what I'm doing.
Well, it's almost like if this guy's story is worse than mine and look what he's doing, I can do this too.
Well, and then I also got exposed to other people in the group because that was on a Saturday night. He actually did a Saturday and a Sunday.
Okay.
So I went back the Sunday and that's when I met a bunch of people.
Gotcha.
And I was accepted.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, I hear all these stories and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is cool. Like,
yeah.
We're all kind of doing this. And we all,
yeah.
There was a commonality.
Yeah.
That we were all struggling with our own self-esteem and our own self-worth.
Right.
And I quickly picked up on that. And again, I was nowhere near figuring out who I could be. But sure. I was like, gosh, we all really don't like ourselves. This is rough stuff,
right, yeah.
And I never noticed that I struggled with that until I was exposed to that.
Yeah.
Meaning, like, when I grew up, things were great,
Yeah.
But I was struggling with self-esteem. I was struggling with kind of who I was and self-worth, and that's why I found drugs.
Yeah.
I mean,
it's a way to feel good.
Yeah.
Even though it was obviously the wrong way to do it, but in the moment.
Yeah. I always explain it to clients now that it's like a key and a keyhole. I mean, it's not like we go out and we want to, end up being homeless or something.
Blow our lives up.
Yeah. But at the right time, it fits in the key, and all of a sudden, it's like, oh, this is good.
Yeah.
And that's what had happened for me. And now that it was stripped away, filling all that stuff and things were crazy. So I did that meeting, and then about a week later, my dad was like, "Hey, let's get you some help. Let's get you into treatment. Let's do something." So I flipped my insurance card over, and they said, "Hey, go up to this hospital and do this thing." And I did, And they said, "Well, you can start today." It was like the middle of the day.
You're like, "What?"
And I'm like, heck yeah, like I had nothing else going.
Yeah, right.
I had like quit my job. I was back at my mom's house, and in my head, I had thought, if I can just fix this, right, everything's going to be okay. I'll, my family will love me again.
Right,
I'll get a job. I just had to fix this. That's how I operated. So I'm like, yeah, sign me up. So I went to started doing, it was a day treatment is what it was.
Oh, okay.
And so you go from 9 until 5 o'clock, and then you go home. And I did that for about a week and a half, and I was leaving, and all these people were coming in. And I'm like, what are they doing? And they're like, oh, it's this night thing we do. It's called outpatient, and they come 3 nights a week. And I'm like, well, can I do that? I'm like, well, yeah, but you do it when you're done with this piece.
Right.
And I'm like, well, can I do it now? Because I was on fire, man. I was loving it. I mean, I was building some self-esteem, and I was loving my therapy, and I felt for the first time that like I could do this. I was opening up.
That's awesome. Yeah.
And they're like, well, I don't know, I guess, sure, come. So I'd go in the morning, get dinner, and then go to the night stuff. Wow. And I did that for about 6 weeks, and then it ended. And I thought, okay, I'm done with treatment. Life's great, right? Everyone loves me again. I'm gonna get my job back.
Yeah.
My wife's gonna be like, hey, yeah, everything's great. It's not the way it worked. Like, everyone's like, no, like, just because you did this, yeah, you checked the boxes. Good job.
Yeah.
and I kind of got knocked down a rung and humbled, and my dad owned a heating and air conditioning business. And so what I would do is I'd go to work with him when I was not in the treatment. So
right.
I never went back to the job I was at. It wasn't the best place, and it just took a leave of absence and ended up quitting.
Right.
I just didn't want to do it anymore. Figured, hey, I've got education. I can do that down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Right now I need to do something that I just go to work and I come home, and he just put me to work, and I was pulling wire and digging holes and putting in air ducts.
Right. Crawling through ceilings.
Yeah. And it was hard work.
Yeah.
And it was hot or it was cold, whatever. Right. But I loved it. Like I felt like I needed to kind of do that,
Yeah.
like I needed to just work.
Yeah.
It kept me busy.
Yeah.
And I was in a really weird
Felt
spot.
like you were accomplishing something. And
I mean, there was several days that I did not want to go, and I would, be laying on the floor. Or, it was a hard time for me, and
yeah.
I felt like no matter what I did, nothing was going right.
Yeah.
I went rehab, like love me, like you're supposed to let me like do everything I want.
Love me.
And
That's funny.
and I remembered, there was one time, man, I was laying on the floor at my parents, and he's like, let's go. And I'm like, I'm not going. And I was just done. Like, I didn't care anymore. It was one of those days, like,
Yeah.
I don't want to do it. He's like, get up. And both my mom and my dad always have taught us, like, you just do what you got to do. You get up, you can do hard things. It's not always easy, all these great lessons. And I remember him basically just dragging me up and like, come on, we're going to work. Like, if you don't do the job, who's it's not going to get done.
Right.
And I remember being so pissed, like, shut up. Like,
right.
Someone will do it,
Someone will do it, yeah.
And I just remember several days just thinking, really? But, and it was good. It was humbling, it helped me, and it helped me get to a point where
yeah,
I felt, one, I was earning my keep, and I was working my butt off,
Yeah.
And it ended up that, things kind of started getting a little bit better. And then, I still was going through some of the legal things, and if you know anything about the legal stuff, it takes flipping ever.
Forever,
like nothing is like done.
Right.
It's the snail's pace of snail's pace.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it was about 9 months into this, and finally it was getting wrapped up, and they're like, okay, you've never been in trouble. You're going to end up getting a fine and some probation and this and that. Well, it came back and they're like, no, we're going to actually give you a sentence. Like, you're going to have to do some jail time. I'm like, what? Why?
Excuse me?
And again, I got right back into that point of, no way. Like, I did all this for nothing, like I hadn't used, I've never used since the day before. It was 15 years ago in February.
Really?
I never did it again. But there were plenty of times where I'm like, well, why am I doing this?
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
And so that happens.
Jeez.
And again, I'm knocked down a rung,
Yeah, it's tough.
And I still was in that pity party.
Yeah.
Like, and this is, I look on this whole story, and this is when it was like, if any of these other things would have worked for me, again, I don't think I'd be here.
Right.
Like, I needed to be humbled so many flipping times. And it sounds like I'm just like, oh, then this happens and I'm complaining. But I promise you, every one of those things, I'm so flipping grateful for it. Because when they told me, okay, you're going to go to jail, I'm like, really? And I did. They took me away.
They're like, here we go.
And I'm like, well, okay, I guess this is my life.
Yeah.
And you almost kind of play into that, well, I guess I'm not worth anything. I'm this, I'm that. You go into that pity party again, And I was there a couple days, and then they were like, I saw this sign, and it said, you apply for work release. And so I applied for work release. And they're like, oh, you don't get to do that. You're only here this amount of time. You're not here long enough for it. You don't live within the boundaries, every other thing. So again, I'm like, I guess, F the world, the world doesn't like me.
Right.
Wah, wah, wah.
Yeah.
And I went back that night, and I just kind of fell apart. And I'd fallen apart 100 times before.
Right.
But this was one of those moments where it was like, okay, universe.
Yeah.
I've given up 100 times, but I'm done. There's nothing else for me. And I just knelt down. I just prayed. I'm like, look, what? Like, really? Like, for real? Like, there's nothing else. I don't know what else you can do, you know? And I was a broken person again, you know? And it wasn't like I had this like lightning bolt that shocked down and everything, you know?
Everything was good.
It was just like, all of a sudden, I'm like, well, okay. Like, you've done this the past year. You got yourself into this mess, first of all. This is no one else's fault.
Right.
And you need to stop being such a baby about everything. and look what you've done. Like, don't give up everything you've done.
Yeah.
And just keep going. Like, keep going with what you're doing.
Keep working on it. Yeah.
And that really, it kept in my mind, just keep going. And I remember just thinking, okay, I can do this. It doesn't matter. Like, bring it on. Like, I had a definite attitude change.
Yeah.
Instead of complaining and trying to blame everybody and mad at the universe and mad at
which you and I both know that victim stance is the killer.
Yeah.
That's what keeps you stuck more than anything.
And unfortunately, I had never been, really taught that yet. Like,
right. Yeah. You didn't know.
I didn't know.
Right.
And it's easy to be wah, you know, and complain and
very easy.
Stuck in your crap.
And, we've all done it.
And so but when when it changed, I'm like, no one else can do this for me other than me. Like, I got myself into this. You made the decisions. Yeah. Now make the decisions to be better, you know? And I didn't learn that in the treatment I went to. Right. I didn't learn that in the counselor I talked to. Yeah. It just all of a sudden I was like, knock it off, you know?
Yeah, it was like an aha moment.
Yeah,
like, whoa, okay.
And what was a weird place to do that.
Yeah.
But it did. It changed. And, dude, the weirdest things started happening. I mean, all of a sudden, I got approved for the work release. I got out. I, went to, had to go to my mom's. And even that time, they're like, oh, well, you don't live in this county. You're not going to be able to do this. And again, I kind of got into that, like, I'll see, and I'm like, no, it'll work out. And it did. It worked out. They had like 3 different places you got to work. And I didn't get picked for any of them. And I'm like, what's wrong with me? Everyone's gone. So I'm thinking, something bad's going to happen now.
Yeah, right.
So I'm sitting all alone.
Yeah.
And I'm sitting there going, okay, what's going to happen?
What bad thing's coming?
Yeah. And this guy comes up to me and he goes, hey, come with me. And he was a police officer. And we walk out and he takes me over to this like shop place. And it was the evidence locker for Salt Lake County. And he's like, so what you're going to do is you're just going to kind of detail all the SWAT team stuff. And you kind of just be our janitor basically.
Right. Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, well, where's everyone else? He's like, no, you're alone. Oh, and wow. I'm like, and I instantly felt like, this guy had no reason to trust me.
Right.
But they're like, no, it's okay. Like, they treated me like an employee. Mm. They didn't treat me any different. And I still don't know how that worked out.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Right.
But they did. It was like my job.
That's cool.
And then I got to eat lunch with them.
Yeah.
They were really, really cool with it, And again, things just kind of were better, My family was starting to trust me. I was still had to, get the trust of my wife, but we worked through it. We went through a little bit of counseling and kind of worked on some things. And she was very like, nope, this is the way it is. And if you don't do these things and I had to, restart my entire life.
Yeah.
And it was awesome.
Wow.
Cause I did it.
You did it.
And it wasn't like there was like a finish line. Like, okay, past the finish line, everything's cool.
Yeah.
Like it was one of those, like still to this day.
Just
like,
keep working.
You just keep going and keep doing what you're supposed to do. And things just kind of happen for you.
And I think people listening to your story right now are probably, you're very, even times you've told me your story, you're very positive about it, even though at times it was a horrific thing you were going through. And it was rough, but I think it's really impressive how you look at it as a blessing and that it's actually, I'm glad all these things happen because, here you are sitting as Wasatch's executive director, which is pretty amazing considering what you went through, right?
Well, it was right. And the interesting thing is it put me on a trajectory of thing that I didn't know. Right. So
right. Yeah.
I loved treatment. I loved how everything kind of happened. And after all that was kind of in the past, some years later, I was sitting there thinking, I want to go back to school. Maybe I want to be a therapist.
Yeah.
I love it. Like I absolutely love it. And so I went up to the school, I went up to the U, and they're like, yeah, you have a finance degree, you want to do your master's in social work? Like, and why don't you do your MBA? Like, and I'm like, no, really, I want to do it. And they said, look, we've got this.
That's awesome.
And at the time it was different than it is now, but they called it the LSAC program, licensed substance abuse counselor. And they said, hey, we've got this kind of 2-track thing. You can kind of do a master's level classes. And if you decide to do a social work degree down the future, then a lot of them will kind of transfer over. But in the meantime, you'll get your feet wet and see if you really want to do that. Like, all right, cool. And I did it, and it was the coolest thing ever. I mean, the classes, I couldn't get enough of it.
Yeah.
I got to do a practicum. I got to do all these things, and it was really, really fun. And the thing is, though, is I was thinking, okay, this is fun. It was almost like a hobby because I'm like, how am I going to make money doing this? Like, how am I going to raise a family doing this? Because I started learning that, you're not going to make much money. It's a very limited type of thing if you keep going, definitely.
Yeah.
But what I was doing at the time, I had taken a step back, I'd made some decent money and we were in a home and doing some things. And I was thinking, I don't think I can work once this internship's done. What these guys are also making, I don't think I'll be able to do it. I'll have to have 3 jobs,
Yeah, right.
But I loved it, and I didn't know how it was going to work, and when I was doing those practicums, I met a lot of great people that I'm still really good friends with now that were kind of my mentors. Right. And they had worked in this field, and a couple of them just kind of took me under their arm and just said, hey, you can do it this way. They even trained me as brought me in as as a social worker and different things. Right. And exposed me to things that, somebody didn't always get. Yeah. I got really good opportunities. Yeah. And from that opportunity, one of the people that I became really good friends with was the director at another agency, and said, hey, we're, opening this. They already had it open, but they wanted to kind of make it a different kind of section of a treatment center. Yeah. Which was with mothers and children. And they said, hey, we need some help doing this. We know you kind of have a little bit of business background and, you're doing the counseling thing. Would you like to help? I'm like, heck yeah, Yeah. So I remember I went home and I told my wife, Bree, I said, hey, I think I'm going to do this full time. And she's like, all right, cool. And I said, but this is how much I'm going to make. And she's like, all right, cool. Yeah. And there was never well, how are we going to do this? And that's how she's always been. It's always just been let's do it.
We'll make it work.
And there's been several times where I've gone to her and we're like, let's do this. All right, cool. Let's figure it out. It was, and I'm telling you, I remember the first time I got my check and I looked at it and I'm like, crap, can we do this? Because, right? I'm like the breadwinner, and I'm like, and she worked too.
Sure.
But I just felt like, okay, whatever, we'll figure it out, Yeah. And it was awesome. That was like more experience and knowledge I could have ever got working there. I got exposed to all different types of treatment modalities, the business end, the treatment end, people, how it worked. It was a nonprofit, so I got to see how that works. Yeah. It was like college,
Dang.
That's and awesome. It was awesome. And the people that I worked with just were like free reign, like, hey, let's figure this out. Let's do this. And it's a very special place still to me. I'll always have a heart for it, and not just for the experience, but it's a special place. It really is. It's just got a unique spirit about it.
Yeah. That's awesome.
It's a pretty cool place. But it put me on this path of looking at different things, and people were like, hey, you were able to do that, and why don't you help us with this? And so people kept asking me, hey, help us with an outpatient, help us with this, help us with that. And I did it. I kind of went on this little parade for about 4 years or so of kind of opening things and doing things and being exposed to
what
things.
a great experience to do all that.
It was awesome.
Yeah.
It was, again, it was a blessing, and it was fun.
Yeah.
I mean,
which all led to really what you're doing now. Because you now understand every area of treatment. It's in a way that most people don't.
I'm very lucky because like right before here I was on the phone with the insurance company, trying to manage that piece.
Yeah.
But then, later today I could be doing an intake with somebody or speaking to a family, I've done everything from interventions to doing groups to, working on contracts with different insurance companies. So it's fun. I get to, and I'm also don't like to be bored. So it helps me be able to, if I'm just stuck doing the same thing.
Yes. You're one who's always doing something.
I have to. It's part of my personality.
It goes back to what we were saying earlier. Like, you love to have fun. Another thing that you do that I really actually am kind of jealous. You go buy old arcade games and you find their parts and you make them good. And you've got several games in your basement, right? Or in your house.
I do. Yeah, I do.
And
that's the other thing. My wife's always like, whatever, just
what are we doing now? But I love that, because that's just kind of how you live your life. You just enjoy it to the fullest, and you have fun, and you make it fun for your family, and you make it fun here at work. You're when things are getting really serious, and I don't know if you notice this, but I notice it, that you really try to make things, hey guys, we don't need to take it so serious. Yeah. And that's always been kind of your MO, and I've really always looked up to that. I've never told you that, and this is the honest truth. Like, when I see you when we're in some heavy meeting, sometimes you're like, hey, we don't need to, we don't have to lose sleep over this. We're going to be okay. Well, I've really liked how you approach it like that.
Well, and thank you. And that, again, that's part of how I've kind of progressed, because we deal with heavy stuff here. Yeah. But there is times, like right now, we're dealing with the whole virus thing, and it's stressful, and we don't know what's happening from day to day, right?
Right.
But again, we're still going to have to come to work tomorrow. We're still going to have to get up. We're still going to have to help our families. We're still going to have to do all these things. And what I've tried to do with my life, and I let it bleed into work or wherever else, is we need to not get so wrapped up in all of the garbage.
Right.
There's things we need to deal with. I'm not saying just forget about them and just ignore things, but we need to focus on what we can do at the time. And if we can't, and we tell this to our clients all the time, if you can't fix something right now, it's okay. And if it's not just you, that's why we have a team too.
Yeah. A team. Yeah. Love that.
Yeah. And I feel it's important to lighten the mood.
No, I love that. No, that's great. Well, if there's someone listening to this right now, Corey, who's struggling, or if they have a family member who's struggling, what would be the best way for them to reach out to you and to get in contact with you?
Well, just call Wasatch, I've, again, dealt with several families.
What's that number, by the way?
I always have to.
Do you know it? I'm going to put you on the spot.
I always give out my cell phone to everyone else, but the main number is 801-901-0024. Okay. And then, but you can reach me on my email. That's probably the best way too. Okay. And it's Corey, Corey, at wasatchrecovery.com. Perfect. And I'm happy to answer questions or whatever I can do to help out.
No, perfect. Well, I want to thank you for taking some time and sitting down. And I know there's a lot more to your story that we could probably spend a whole nother belief cast on. But thank you for being vulnerable and sharing what you've gone through and your struggles. And like I said, I really do enjoy working with you and rubbing shoulders with you. It's great because I really love coming here. You don't micromanage anybody. You let us be us. Yeah. And I just want to thank you for that as well. Absolutely. And I think that's why I think Wasatch is the best, because of that reason. So
we've got an awesome team.
We really do.
It's nothing that we have to try hard. We're all different. We're all unique, but we all get along pretty well. Oh yeah. And we're all so different, but we get along so well. It's cool. We do. It's a good place to be.
It's a really good place to be. Well, there you go, folks. Corey, thank you so much for your time, and listeners, thank you for your support. Please share this with people you may know who are struggling with addiction or just need an inspirational story. This will be perfect for that. And please reach out to Corey. He is a very approachable guy. You can come see him. He really will make you feel like everything's going to be okay. And I think when we have clients coming in who are scared to even be here, I think when they sit down and they even talk to you for a minute, they feel like, oh, okay, I can do this. Yeah. And I think it's because of the experiences you've been through. So it's really cool to watch.
It's not a shameful thing.
No.
I mean, people, whether it's substance abuse, mental health, whatever it is, if you're struggling with something, get help.
Yeah, absolutely. There's always hope, and you can change your life, and Corey's living proof of that. And
if you've seen the picture in my office, I have a famous graffiti artist that has a thing right in there, and it says there's always hope.
Yep.
Because there is.
Yeah, it's a cool picture. Yeah. Well, thanks, Corey. You're awesome, and I'm grateful to know you. I'm glad we're not only coworkers, but we're good friends as well. So thank you.
Happy to do it.
Thank you. Okay, well, till next time, folks, and thanks again for all your support.